Hi everyone, and welcome to Avid CNC's Friday live streams. Thanks for joining and thanks for being here. We would love to welcome Jeff from Narwhal Labs and Total Boat today. So thanks so much for being here with us.
Hey, no problem. Thanks, Sami. Thanks, Cory.
Yeah, we're excited. So everyone let us know how everything sounds and looks. I know there might be some buffering. Just stick with it and let it load a little bit, and that sounds great. Okay. Oh, great. So we have, where's everyone from? Hey, Bernie, good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Bernie.
Where's everyone calling in from today? We want to see where you're from. Hey, Greg, good to see you from Hawaii. Aloha. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Jeff, how's everything going in the shop today? You were working on something right before we jumped on the call. What were you working on? Uh-oh.
Jeff,
You guys there?
yeah, there you
Hey,
go.
I dropped
okay.
you for a second. Hey.
Hey. Well, so now that I have you back, what were you working on in the shop today?
So today we've been working on some video content. We have been working on a lot of videos for short informational instructional videos that'll go on Instagram, showing different processes. Just working on people how to calculate volumes of their molds, so how much epoxy to pour in the mix.
Cool.
So that's what I've been doing today.
Were you doing more of like a manual style of measuring how much volume your mold is for your object, like with the water displacement, or were you using like Fusion to calculate the volume of an object?
We're just using rulers and a calculator and figuring it out and kind of guesstimating it from that using formulas.
Cool.
So
Awesome. Yeah, there's so many like
figure
interesting.
everybody's got everybody's got a ruler and a calculator. That's easy to figure out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess it depends like what kind of shape or object you have. And the thing I really love is I've been trying to really work on my Fusion 360 skills. So you can calculate the size of the object that you want to cast. So you can mix the exact amount you want to cast, but then you can also calculate the size of the mold around it. So I think that's a tool that is underutilized or something you can always tap into. The other way I've known is, having a bucket of water and measuring where the water line is. And if you have like a weird shaped object, like a figurine or something, if you push it in the water, however high the water rises is the volume of that object. Yeah. Awesome.
that's definitely a way to do it.
Yeah.
I guess the only concern we had with the water method is we don't want to get you water in your mold and then water in your epoxy.
Yeah, that's true.
Not what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So unless you're super good about drying it, you might run into some issues there. But it worked out, and so we were able to wrap that video.
Cool. All right.
So what are you guys working on in your shops?
Yeah, Cory, what are you working on today or this weekend? You have any projects?
I'm working on so I'm working on for back games that has a builder and is a little more like a French easel, your traditional plywood kind of scorekeeper stand. So I think I'm going to try into that.
Yeah, so like
again.
if y'all are familiar with those French painting easels, they kind of look like a box that you could carry with a handle. And then the legs fold down and you have a back that folds up to hold the painting and that kind of thing. When I used to take landscape painting classes in France, my teacher would make us be able to assemble it out and put it away blindfolded. That's how good we had to be at putting it together. Yeah, but that's a fun project. What are you designing it in?
Designing that in Fusion.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's really great for assemblies.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And have the joints and then break down all the different individual components. So yeah, no, it should be a fun little build.
Yeah, you can also use the McMaster-Carr plugin to figure out exactly the right hardware to fit in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm working on some furniture builds. I'm building this dining table that also doubles as record storage. So, because we have way too many records, so working on that. One of the fun things, I had a sample somewhere, but I'm using this bendy plywood. So it's really thin, and when you layer it, you can make really cool curved shapes. So I'm excited for that. And Izzy Swan has a really great video he made a month or two ago about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he called it Wiggly Wood.
Yeah, there's a
Is
lot
that
of
right?
different names for it.
Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard it called wacky board, wiggly board, wood.
Yeah, yeah,
It's neat stuff. All they do is instead of plywood is alternating grain, and they just put all the grain in the same direction,
right.
and it kind of gets you that effect. It's neat stuff.
Yeah. So, so Narwhal Labs has you've been working on building out all of the things for the makerspace. Can you tell us a little bit about what Narwhal Labs is and where the ideas came from and how it all works?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess we got to start back to before day one, right? I met Total Boat and started talking to him back at Maker Camp over near Jimmy DeResta's place last year in the fall. They had a meetup shortly thereafter, and I started talking to some guy, and I didn't know who he was, just about general makerspaces and my thoughts on them. And it turns out it was the owner and president of Total Boat that I was talking to. And I came back a couple times and met with him a few times, and he decided that he wants to have a makerspace here of some kind and needed somebody to make that happen, and he hired me to do that. So I came into Total Boat starting in January and started with the room that I'm in now, which was a 1,600-ish square foot room. It was completely blank slate, and I had to figure out how to equip it, build it, get all the furniture in here, but also figure out the logistics of running a makerspace too. The space is built. We're ready to go. We have a whole bunch of tables here that I've designed and cut on my own Avid CNC Pro 6096 machine. So we have 8 tables that people can sit around and hang out at and do their computer work on. We have behind my computer here is some epoxy stations where I could probably swing around. And back there is a wall of all of the Total Boat stuff and our epoxy stations. So we have those all built out. Some vinyl cutter carts. I'm going to swing the other way.
Oh, yeah.
You can maybe see the vinyl cutter carts in the background there.
That was a really
we
great
have a laser
video.
back there. And oh, thanks. That was based on the design that Jen Schechter, who works with Tid, did. And I took that and made a fusion model of it and cut them out on an Avid machine, and it worked out pretty well. We also have our Avid Pro 2448 behind me here, which is a good size for this room here. This is kind of an all-purpose do everything room. So there wasn't really space for a big machine in here, but Avid came through, and you guys are awesome and helped us out and got us set up with an excellent machine here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like that'll be a really cool thing to make molds and do all sorts of complementary parts to, or do engravings for casting and for inlays and that sort of thing.
Right, for sure.
And all the furniture you designed and made on the CNC machines, is that right?
Yep. So it was designed, I designed in Fusion and made all. The only piece that I did not design is actually the table I'm sitting at right now, which is kind of our woodworking bench. And that was one of the open source AtFab designs that you may be familiar with. They have a table, I think it's called the one to several table.
Yeah. Thanks everyone who's joining us and who's here. Hey everybody, I'm so excited that you're here today. And can you please, if you have any questions about epoxy or about making things, about CNC and any of that kind of workflow, just go ahead and drop that in the chat, and we'll kind of bring those up as you like. Yeah. So
You'd mentioned how you guys started in January and where you are today, and kind of what type of architecture you had to set up to make that plan happen. And then do you plan on sharing that, or would you be willing to guide other people if they were also interested in starting a makerspace to a similar type of plan that you executed?
Yeah, for sure. And Cory, I know you and I have talked about this, but definitely our mission here is that we were planning on opening all this up. Also, all the furniture designs, by the way, we have them linked in a few places. But if you go to Narwhal Labs GitHub, and everything there is public, and that's where we're putting all the diffusion files, vector files, all that. So open source from that perspective, but our business model too. I guess context is important here, and not everyone has experience with makerspaces. There's been a few different models. Some are just really grassroots movements, groups of friends getting together and making stuff. They end up renting some space, sharing some tools. And those spaces are great. I'm a member of one that's nearby, Rhode Island Maker Mill. Just a quick shout out to those guys. It's a difficult model because now you have individuals that are just there for each other. They don't necessarily get corporate king or funding, so everyone's reaching into their pockets every month just to make the rent, and it can be a little bit tricky. Side of it is you can have corporate makerspaces. We've seen some. I guess maybe I shouldn't mention any names there. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but
no,
some have tried really hard and tried to make their model work. But at that point now it's fee for service, and the fee sometimes has to get way, way high, and it detracts from people wanting to join. And we've seen, I'm sure I've seen options try and unfortunately fail. So in our case here, Narwhal Labs is an investment by Total Boat as a marketing expense and product and R&D expense. And it's also kind of incubator for our own people. We can use Narwhal Labs to find new employees and people to work with us. So there's a lot of value in it outside of just being a public makerspace, which it is, by the way. We'll have a very low membership fee. Our target is $30 a month, and it's really just to cover consumables. And yes, we are providing consumables, epoxy, 3D printer filament, CNC tooling. We're going to continue to supply all that as long as we're open, right? And shop, just general shop maintenance and upkeep. The benefit is we don't have to worry about paying the rent. Space has lots of value to the business otherwise. So it's just a happy accident that this gets to be an awesome public makerspace.
right.
And we're not worried about having X number of members and meeting quotas or anything like that. It's just let's make stuff, have fun, and be open.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's really the goal. And I hope to keep this as open source as possible so other businesses that maybe are in similar positions can open their own spaces following our model.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I do think that model, has sustainability because it becomes a win-win for whichever business decides to kind of invest in that marketing approach. Because really, it's people succeeding in manufacturing and learning is always a win-win.
Yep, for sure. And I just want to stop for a second. There are some comments. First off, thank you, Greg. Appreciate it there. Sewing tables I made. I just want to answer that question quick. I made sewing tables probably years ago, design that I put together and tried out at my old makerspace. Still a member of, but that is out there, I believe. But you can be online and shoot me a message. And I'll get you set up. And you can certainly make your own sewing. There are some comments about video and audio delays. My own screen is pretty delayed. So I know Sami and hear you guys just fine here over our Skype chat. It's definitely having some
Yeah,
issues too.
I see that. I think there is a delay. Maybe what I might suggest is if you can pause it for a few minutes and then come back, it'll allow the delay to catch up. Um, we really appreciate your patience there. It's just unfortunately something we're dealing with this computer setup today, but hopefully we should have that resolved by next week with a new computer that's far better at streaming. It has that capability. Yeah, Rodney says he'd love to be involved in a makerspace. There are so many different kinds of maker spaces and different kinds of models. Some have more economically sustainable business models. Like I think that the Total Boat Narwhal Labs is a really great way to approach it because unfortunately we've seen a lot not quite work out. But if you can make a way for that to be possible, it really is an amazing thing because I like to think about making as a team sport, and it's really something collaborative. It can be, I understand it's difficult sometimes to own every single tool in a wood shop that you want all on your own. You can't move that 2,000-pound sculpture by yourself or whatever it may be. So, leaning on other people for help and is always a really great thing. We have a slow maker space in San Luis Obispo. Oh yes, that's awesome. I love San Luis Obispo. Unfortunately, yeah, closed for the last 3 months. I hope y'all can open when it's safe and have everyone back in the shop. Cory, what's your experience with maker spaces?
Yeah, so I taught a CNC class at a local makerspace here in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle. And so teaching people who were comfortable with tools but hadn't worked with the CNC before. And so it's always a blast for me, starting with those first projects and watching the ideas start to seed where people are like, oh, so it can do this and it can do that. And really, see the capabilities that a tool like a CNC can bring into a manufacturing element or a workflow. And so, and for me, we didn't have epoxy at that makerspace,
Mm-hmm.
but I think epoxy and early CNC projects really go hand in hand to make some exceptionally beautiful and easy to learn type of projects. And so it's one of the reasons why I play with so much epoxy on my own personal projects, so I can help guide people in that process.
Yeah.
Cool.
One of my first jobs in Portland after I graduated was a CNC technician at a makerspace. So they had a really interesting business model where they had membership, education, and then fabrication. So you can make it, you can learn how to make it, or you can hire us to make it was kind of the format. Unfortunately, when they grew to a second building and had added rent, it wasn't super sustainable. But if you can put all of those things under one roof, you can have all those income streams really support the business. So I came up being a CNC technician, making tap handles and signs and that sort of thing, restaurant build-outs for coffee shops and things. And then I worked to become a digital fabrication project manager. So I bid and programmed all of the laser and CNC jobs that came through. And that's actually how I got to know Avid CNC, or at the time it was CNC Router Parts. So they had a machine in the shop and I learned the machine because I had experience with other machines before, and this one was the one that we were teaching classes on. So I wrote and taught the CNC classes for a couple of years there, which was one of the best times because I think it perfectly prepared me for my transition here, because my two passions are really education and making. And I really love that that's what maker spaces make it possible for all sorts of people to kind of come together where, one person might have 20 years of cabinet building experience and one person might have a painting degree, and you can see those collaborations come together, or photography and all these new skill sets that are open and accessible to you. So that's how I got to become a part of Avid actually, kind of where I get to be now.
So, Jeff, how many people are on your guys' Narwhal Labs specific team now?
Really, there's, I guess, three of us. It's myself. Some people may know Graz Makes. He's now working with us full time as a video production guy. He does all our filming and editing. And then we have our supervisor, who is the CIO of Total Boat.
Fantastic.
So that kind of comprises the team right now. And just keep an eye out on the Total Boat Instagram, because we're probably going to be growing coming up pretty soon.
Cool. And then you guys have guest appearances, like kind of guest team members too, right?
Right, and that's what Graz actually said. We called him up and said, you're local. We can't be in an open public makerspace, but we can still shoot some video in here. And we brought him in to shoot a video with us, and he did just such an awesome job, and things worked out. We were able to bring him in full time. But we also planning in other Total Boat ambassadors or other just people out there that want to make cool stuff and use the equipment that we have. So some of you may know Zyla Foxland, formerly affiliated with Beauty and the Bolt, but we had her come in a couple weeks ago and shoot a project with us, which is sitting behind me. And I'm going to
she just started
back
her
around
new channel, right?
Yeah, she
so awesome.
did.
Her work is amazing.
I'm going to hold this for
that
a minute.
looks great.
So this is primary epoxy. This is done, so it's not just watch us do the project, it's informational too.
Yeah.
Now, we have a few of these. I think the one you're going to see on video is this one here. So they were all done a little bit differently, following slightly different processes.
Oh, awesome.
But we have a few of them. And because we have three of them, Zyla's probably going to keep one. I'm sure she'll want to. But the other two, we're going to figure out how to auction those off for a charity that benefits women, which is kind of the theme of that project. And I won't go into too much detail there because I don't want to spoil the video when it comes out. But that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're
Wow,
insanely
those are
beautiful.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. And I can imagine, you doing that for your own, like, you can hang the stained glass in a window. Would that work for a window installation too? Or does that have, like, after it's cured, can it hold up to elements?
Those three are all varnished over top of them. Epoxy, you're going to want to varnish afterwards. It's going to be exposed to UV. Does yellow over time with UV exposure, and varnish can help. So that's just an option.
Yeah.
Total Boat's Maker Epoxy does have some UV inhibitors in it, which, but I would still recommend varnishing.
We have a couple comments here. Richard has a 2x2 Avid CNC at home. Awesome. I have one now, as you can see. Hopefully making the dust shoe and enclosure this weekend, next week. Been pushing for another one. And Kevin was also saying that he'd like to add a 4x8 CNC to a small shop. Is it possible to have a mobile base? That's a good question for Cory. Have you run into that where someone maybe made their base mobile?
Yeah, I always recommend that drop-down casters. So, so you can move the machine around, but the tree is accelerating and decelerating. Have a firm grip to the floor is going to give you the best. So,
yeah.
Well, Jeff, you mentioned the Maker epoxy, and earlier are starting a new kind of project epoxy, right?
I'm not sure if I did.
Oh, okay.
Are you guys still there? Yep. There's a conference that's going remotely that involves some Maker epoxy stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking about the Scout thing I told you about a little bit.
No, I was the Crow Creek Designs, right? The conference.
Yep. Yeah, there's a conference happening shortly. Is it this weekend? I don't know what the weekend is. I wish I knew. Sorry. There's a conference that is that do a lot of DIY and craft type stuff called Haven, put on by the same people that do Workbench on, and Ambassador Jess Crow is doing a class during that. Of all that's going on right now, we're shipping basically kits out to everyone, and it's all going to be remote, and people are going to be able to do that kind of on their own, follow from their homes.
Yeah, so I think it is this weekend. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Jess, her channel, her Instagram, and everything is just wonderful. So we really love watching.
Phenomenal job. I like how she uses different visual elements in ways where it always makes me kind of interested in how she did it, because the sequence is such an important part. So.
Yep. Cory and Sami, I know you guys are kind of this is your world, and you're the experts here. I wanted to respond to, I think, Kevin too. About remember that if you put a CNC on wheels and move it every time you move it, I mean, you should anyway.
Yeah.
Recommendation is find a place for it and stay put if you can. Because every move it, you're going to be chasing around those leveling feet for, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes it takes an hour to get.
Right. I think maybe if you support the frame enough, it is with, your spoil board and that kind of thing, it probably should be okay. But, or if you do choose to have it in a permanent location, is to really utilize the storage space underneath. And adding extra weight to it is always a really good idea, right? Cory always says, we don't want to ship weight, that's just added cost for you. So, you're going to have stacks of plywood and all sorts of things you can store underneath. If you have like a Pro Series machine, for example, here you can see all of my scrap wood underneath my base, but I'm trying to utilize every single cubic foot in my studio because it's a very small, I call this my homemaker space. Inspired by Lynn from Darbin Ovar. She now has her, a full huge shop and a tiny house shop. But when she was based in Oregon, she had her homemaker space, which is like a kitchen. You have your kitchen, you have your living room, and then you have your maker space, which is the lifestyle that I choose to live. Is every room is the maker space. So, yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, other than furniture, what do you think you guys are going to be cutting with the CNC?
We've done a couple of things. Actually, one of the first videos we did, weeding out some polypropylene molds that we were using to do micarta. So we have a reusable micarta mold now, essentially. For around the shop and around the building, and we're going to be doing that on.
Can you explain micarta for someone?
Sure. Micarta is composite material. It's one of the most basic composite material. It's basically epoxy and paper. And if you get up and go grab some, but it's not a big deal. But essentially, you just layer paper. We have epoxy gluing it together, and or put it in a vacuum bag while it cures, and you end up with this very flat that is stronger than either of its components. Right. Epoxy cured on its own is very brittle. Paper on its own is very easy to tear. Put the two together with a pretty strong material that's comp scales, for example.
Right, because it's carvable as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like steel and concrete on bridge, where you that combination of the strength and then the structure or the fill component, when you combine those two, you can make something really, really strong, but also really versatile. And yeah, micarta is a phenomenal material, especially if you're doing prototyping or one-off stuff. You can shape it into all sorts of different types of shapes, and then it can cure to be very, very hard.
Awesome. So, have you been experimenting with other kinds of materials to combine with casting, or is that like the one you've been using that one for a while now, or? Sorry, that wasn't a question.
So we did a lot of my car for the sake of a video, which I get well, but we were doing a thing where we were printing up a specific image and laying it up as our micarta that references
We lost you there for a minute there, Jeff. So while Jeff comes back.
What kind of materials have you been... Oh, there we go. We got you back, Jeff.
Oh. So I might have been talking for about 2 minutes there, and nobody heard. So we were just playing around with the process more than anything, not so much the material, but the process, and trying to nail down the process of making my car to make it as easy and repeatable as possible. You can do it at home with limited materials that almost anyone can get. So you can make melamine board. That mold is probably going to be, you're going to have to destructively remove your micarta from it. It's not reusable, but it's cheap on an Avid machine, or you can cut it with a table saw and make a mold out of that. And do your mic just regular F clamps like you would use if having to deal with the vacuum bag and all the fancy tools. And we got really great. So I would say we were focusing more on the process.
Yeah.
I have some carbon fiber laying around. We got plenty of fiberglass and Kevlar around. My boss sitting over here, Skip, he's done all kinds of neat where he's done like burlap. My car, my wallet was made by him and cut on a CNC, and that's a burlap.
Does Tim sway me up to that? That sounds like something that
be something he could do. I'm over here.
We gotta call Tim up.
But no, that's a good point. Like, hey Tim, where are you? Are you in the chat? Tim, why aren't you doing my card?
Upcycling to that really could offer something. Think about this kind of to t-shirt that you love, but you're not ready to give or turn to rent, to capture that t-shirt as part of my live on to tool, whether it be a handle for a pull saw, a handle for a chisel or a screwdriver or something like that could be a really interesting way to cycle that a longer term tool.
Or even just frame it, because you're kind of stabilizing the material and it's going to last now.
Yeah. Cory, is there any...
Jeff, if you add any additions right now on Narwhal Labs, I know you guys are pretty there. You got your different tools there. If you were going to add another tool in there, what would it be?
I'm going to say this because we've mentioned it a few times and done really wish we had one of those. A water jet to have.
Yeah.
They're kind of... There's two out there I can think of that the realm of accessibility. But accessibility is relative, of course. And it just really almost throw it in it with near laser precision. Now, of course, like you can cut metal with a fiber laser. A fiber laser that can cut even is way more water jet. So I think that would be really cool to be able to do like knife making or tool making here. All kinds of
Bernie
neat
has
stuff.
a really good question. He says, which Total Boat epoxy formula would be best for making micarta? What would you recommend?
Oh, good question, Bernie. My personal choice is the high performance that gives you roughly a 30-minute do a pretty decent thickness layup, maybe like an eighth or 3/16. So plenty of time to work there. So I would go 2-to-1 high performance as my choice.
Yeah, so you have the working time, so you're not panicking during your glue up. I know we've all been there.
Yep, we did some experiment with my card, and we started off using medium, and we got like 3/4 of the way through the layout, starting to cook off.
Right.
And it was starting to get warm and ready to kick.
Yeah.
So we switched to using the slow for future ones, and it worked great. And that was just enough time to get it.
Cool.
Also, one thing, and this is not really an absolute recommendation. One thing we've been experimenting with in the process is something known as post-cure, which is kind of an in process. Large composite manufacturing for like high performance cars, yachts, people doing like big carbon fiber layups. Think of what you'd be using that on. A lot of make the process go faster and actually they cure their epoxy using heat. Very precise, gradually ramping temperatures up and down. There's a slope. We've been playing around a little bit with using that advantage in curing our projects. One thing that some of you working with epoxy may have seen is that you're going to do, and then you got to wait at least overnight, maybe 2-3 days you're using before you can actually work with that piece again. Where you might be able to kick it pretty quickly. So we were able to do a micarta layup, stick it in our makeshift low temperature of around 104 Fahrenheit for an hour and a half, and it's done. And now we can work with it.
Yeah. So just like a DIY, like little warm heating box.
This is very much a DIY solution. This is an official recommendation boat of any kind. I just want to put that asterisk on here. But if you want to experiment with it, it might be a way to do your epoxy projects a little bit quicker.
It's definitely one thing I've learned about working with epoxy, Jeff, is temperature knowledge can really help you get consistent or great results. And so I like to use a laser thermometer to understand what temperature starting at and the results of that. Also, I like to put my hardener and resin in a hot tub, a little warm water bath before I start working with them. Again, I'm trying to focus on the temperatures that I had when I started the mix, and 20 or 30 minutes into the pour when they start to thicken up, and my results, temperature be a big part of the results that I'm getting.
Great. And your environment has so much to do with it, because like up here in the Pacific Northwest, like it's pretty chilly. Even, right now it's like 60 degrees out. I'm not sure what the ideal temperature is, but for faster curing. When I worked for the cement casting studio, we did a similar little hot box with reflective insulation on the inside, some heat lamps, and we're able to throw our molds in. Is in the wintertime we're working in an unheated space, no running hot water type of thing, and then you want to throw them in there, and you'll be able to pull them out of the mold far faster. You don't need to use it as much in the summertime, but just being aware of that there are tools accessible to you,
Say quick that most of our epoxies, if you look at our technical sheets, and if you go to totalboat.com and look at the page for any epoxy, there's a link to all the technical data, including cure time and how to. But just about all of our products are tested at 77 Fahrenheit. That's the magic temperature they decide to test everything at. So when you see our numbers for work time, that's what you should be kind of aiming for. But we also do list minimum and maximum temperatures and stuff. So you have a range you can work with, but optimal mid-70s.
Oh yeah, that's what I like. Nice and warm. Yeah, I turn the thermostat up. It's awesome. And Rodney says he uses a fast set that he can carve in about an hour. Only have about a 5-minute working time, but most of the time it works for him. That's cool. Yeah.
Yep. So you could certainly use like a 5-minute epoxy. Usually when you run with a faster curing hard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got someone coming in here. That's Mike, and he is the president and founder of Total Boat.
Hey, good to see you. Good. Yeah, can you hear us?
He can hear you now.
Yeah, there's an
Yeah,
echo.
so this is our.
It's good to see you.
Oh, it's good.
They're in Portland, Oregon, and Washington State.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see you. Last time we got to see
Yeah.
the Total Boat crew was when we were in Atlanta for Workbench Con. It was a really good,
Yeah.
great time. Highly recommend it to all the makers out there.
All right, well, have fun, guys.
Awesome.
All right. So from Mr. Total Boat himself.
All right, Captain.
So what I was saying there is when you do use a faster setting epoxy, like a 5-minute epoxy, or even just our the fast hardener, you do lose a little bit of clarity. It tends to yellow a little bit all the way to it. Sometimes it's cloudy a little bit, epoxy you're using. So as a general rule, the slower hardeners will in better clarity. But if you're just gluing stuff to need to cut it later, then after that, it's fine. If you're looking to do inlay work or anything that requires, you want to use something like the Tulo hardener or make epoxy.
Cool. Yeah, there's so many options, and you know, like just the right combination. So I guess anyone out there, if you aren't quite sure what the solution is, like they'll be more than happy to help you figure that out. I feel like whenever I'm not sure, I'm like, okay, I gotta call Jeff and ask him, you know, what your recommendation would be, because there's so many different use cases. Yeah, and same with Cory. Like if you don't know the exact machine or exact work holding, you know, reach out to us, and we're happy to help you figure that out too with your project.
I can't say enough good things about Avid CNC and their support. One thing that you guys in the chat not know is before I worked with them here and before I bought a machine, and were helpful over the past I think year and a half now.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. But also, if anyone ever has Total Boat questions, absolutely reach out to us at any time. Our phone number is up on totalboat.com. I wish I remembered it off the top of my head, but you can call our tech support team and answer questions about your project and guide you to which product you can use. If you message us on Instagram at Total Boat, we have a social media who is always more than happy to help and guide you in the right direction. And you can always message me at the Narwhal Labs account on Instagram, and I'll help out however I can.
Yeah, and if I can encourage anything, you know, Caitlin say make, fail, make, right? And sometimes with epoxy, you know, for your application, your materials, getting that information or that starting point is good, but then also maybe trying 2 or 3 different approaches or different combinations, get the results that you are looking for, or the, you know, the strength that you are looking for is always an approach that I can get behind. And so, yeah, seek out, try to get educated if you can, but then sometimes you just got to jump in the pool and try it and try a couple different ways. And I would just encourage people to take.
Yeah, for sure. Adam Savage himself said there is always an option. It really is. I mean, if you're not trying to, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't try it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Do we have any more? Oh, wait, we got one more question. If anybody has last second questions, please drop them in there. I think there's a question for you. Do you see that? From Rodney.
Yep. So when UV protection. So we Doxy is an a resin geared tool that does have built-in UV inhibitors really helps. You can't, in its nature, it's impossible to 100% have UV proof epoxy, so it's always recommended over top of it. My preference is also a Total Boat product that I've been using before I worked at Total Boat called Halcyon. It's a water-based varnish. That's super. You lay it on pretty